And then she called the manager over. The manager came over and looked at the bill and held it up, looked at the strip and the watermark, and they accepted it. She was like, oh, it must just be an old bill. The machine's maybe messed up or something. It's fine. And thought it was weird. So he went and put one of my bills in a cup of water. And he said, like, after 5 minutes, the two pages just separated.
It's funny how you still had a passion for it. You really took the time to learn it.
We know you're a drug dealer, but we don't care about that. We're the Secret Service. We want to know about this counterfeit money.
So today I have with me Jeff Turner, an individual known for counterfeiting over $1 million worth of $100 bills, particularly the 1996 series and also some of the blue $100 bills. The Secret Service actually counted Jeff as one of the best of all time, so he's clearly good at what he does. And today we're going to get into the story of how he got into this, how it all went down, and I'm excited to talk to you. So I guess the first question I have is, how did your journey with this start, and why did you decide to get into counterfeiting over other things to make money?
I started counterfeiting when I was younger. Like I started when I was about 19 years old, and I did it for like 6 months. I made probably like 50 grand over the course of like 6 months. And then like the guy I was selling the bills to was like one of my friend's dad's friends, who was like a connected guy in Tampa, and he was doing whatever with him. But my friend ended up overdosing and dying. So like I kind of didn't have that connection to sell him anymore. So like I basically just stopped doing it for like many years, and then like I got into the sign business, like learned graphic design a lot better throughout the years. And then like I kind of found myself in a desperate like financial situation. Basically, like I lost my job. I had a newborn baby at home. Like the lease was almost up in the house we were renting. So like I was just kind of in a spot to where I needed money quick. And so yeah, basically just decided to get back into it. And like the latest time I did it, I took it more seriously. The first time I started, I was 19. I was just trying to make a quick buck. And, like the latest time I was, in my early 30s, and I learned graphic design, and I prepped for like months to like actually, make bills that were like as flawless as they could be. You know what I mean?
So the second time around, you really like planned it out. Like you kind of had like a little bit of a process to get into it. So could you go into like your counterfeiting process and how that worked?
Yeah. So like basically, like I knew. So like a lot of it has to do with the digital files, right? Because it's all digital. Like I was doing digital printing. I wasn't using big offset, printing presses and stuff. Like inkjet printers are super advanced now. So you can pretty much replicate like microprinting practically with like an $800 printer. So like I got these images, and like so basically like I took some stock images from like Wikipedia actually. And then but I also took high resolution photos of like I took $100 bill and ironed it out, like got it nice and crisp and flat, and took a high resolution photo of it, uploaded those photos, and then through like basically Adobe. I wasn't using Adobe. I was using a kind of like a freeware program online called paint.net, which it's very similar to like Illustrator or Photoshop. So like with that, I broke the images down to like multiple different layers. So like I'd erase everything except the background color for one layer, and then another layer with like the serial numbers and treasury seals, and then I'd like have like 20 more layers with the serial numbers jumbled up, so they were all different serial numbers. So like, and then another layer with the black work, and another layer with the strip and the watermark, another layer with the back of the bill, blah, blah, blah. So like I'd print these layers one at a time. So like the printers didn't really recognize that I was printing money, because you kind of broke it down into different layers. And so like I found that Bible paper worked like really well, because like most of the Bible paper I was using is a cotton linen rag, just like currency. And also like it glows in UV light, a dull purple, just like money. Whereas like most paper glows a bright fluorescent blue. And it really stands out if you put it in a black light. But this Bible paper I found was like just perfect for everything I needed it for. It was opaque enough to where I could print the strip and the watermark on the back of the back, and then sandwich two sheets together. You couldn't see the strip or watermark through the face of the bill, but if you held it up to the light. And there was a lot of trial and error with that. Like adjusting like the contrast and brightness of the strip and the watermark to get it just this light dull gray, just to where it was the right brightness, you know what I mean? And then like to break all the security features, basically, like I found a certain type of holographic green eyeshadow that like I adjusted the contrast on the 100 in the bottom corner and made it solid black, and then painted over it with iridescent green eyeshadow. So it like replicated the color shifting ink like pretty flawlessly. I used these like metallic green jelly roll pens first, and I'd color it in, and then take this iridescent green eyeshadow and touch it up, and it just shifted from green to black like pretty perfectly. And then I found these invisible ink UV pens and took a ruler over the strip and just drew a line. That way, if they put it under a black light, the strip would appear to glow red. And I sprayed the bills with a matte lacquer spray so they'd mark well with the pen. And, as I went on, I kind of like beat more security features, because like I'd go to one store and like a cashier would scratch the shirt to feel the texture. So then like they still accepted the bill, but it kind of spooked me. So I went to like a Hobby Lobby and found an embossing pen, like a fine tip blue pen, and then started just drawing little lines over a shirt, and it would give it this kind of texture. And if you ran your finger along it, you'd feel this texture, because I used a clear embossing pen. You know what I mean? So all these things kind of just added up over time. And like towards the end, the bills looked pretty good. You know what I
mean? That's crazy. So it was definitely like a lot of trial and error, probably over a period of like several months, if not a few years, as they kind of continuously got better. But like, was there any other ways you were learning how to make these bills? Did you ever like ask other people who were maybe also into counterfeiting? Did you like read up on how US bills were made? Like, was there like any techniques? Because I'm thinking like, even with trial and error, it would be really hard to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I've never met personally like a counterfeiter on the streets that was like that I've learned anything from. Like, because I like read extensively and research, and like, like I just basically learn how the BEP, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, does it themselves. And through that, you kind of just learn how to replicate those features. Like, you learn about I learned about the texture through like reading about intaglio presses and how the BEP actually prints the ink themselves. They've got like negative images on plates that are engraved, and then they put the ink on the plate. So then when they stamp it down in high pressure on these intaglio presses, it makes the ink raise above the paper, which gives it a texture. And they also use like magnetic ink. And there's infrared security features, UV security features, microprinting. If you learn all these security features, you kind of know at least where to start trying to like beat them or replicate them, as best as possible. I actually learned how to replicate the blue 3D security ribbon, trying to learn how they were doing it. So like I was trying to figure out how the BEP, and they actually contract a private company called Crane Currency to make the 3D security ribbon and the paper and stuff. And I was able to find the patent rights on that 3D security ribbon under Crane Currency in Google Patents. It's under a lenticular motion, which like through that, I kind of learned about lenticular printing. And like they use this type of lenticular film called fly eye lenticular lens arrays. And it's like these microscopic little lenses. And if you print like certain dots in a certain pattern with multiple images, there's software that like integrates multiple images. You punch in the printer's DPI with the lens film's LPI, lenses per inch, and it kind of integrates multiple images into this like fly eye looking weird design, and it prints it that way. And then you lay this film over top of it like a sticker, and you adjust it just right, and it creates this 3D motion type effect. So yeah, basically like just by learning how Crane Currency and the Bureau of Engraving and Printing does it themselves, you kind of learn how you can at least replicate it as best as you can,
And in terms of like startup costs to do this, was it pretty expensive to buy all the needed tools, like from the printer to like all the little things you need to create these bills? Because you mentioned when you got into it the second time, you didn't have a bunch of money. So did you try to figure out a way to do it as cheap as possible?
Yeah, I mean, as I went on, I kind of made more money and was able to invest in better equipment. Like at first, I was using like $100 printer, which still was a pretty high resolution printer. Like I said, nowadays inkjet printers are pretty advanced. Like you can go buy like $100 printer it'll print pretty high quality if the digital images that you're printing are very high resolution. Printer's capability is great. It's mainly the digital files. So I spent a lot of time editing the images and spent like probably a month and a half, 2 months perfecting these images and erasing all the bleed and blur and making the resolution as crisp as I could. You know what I mean? That was the most important thing, was like the digital files.
And did it take a few months before you even like started making the bills, like while you were still getting the digital images together?
It took a couple months, I'd say, before it probably took almost 2 months before I was able to actually like start selling them and then breaking them myself. It was kind of like, so like I did it in the past when I was younger. So I knew this was like an investment, you know what I mean? I knew it would pay off. So like I basically like I was making money a little bit to get by here and there, but like I knew if I just got these digital images down, eventually it would be like an unlimited tap of money, basically.
And how long did the trial and error process take before you started getting like pretty good at it to where you were making like, let's say, a couple $1,000s worth of bills a day, or like $1,000 of bills at once?
I'd say after a couple months, I had all the images and everything, and I really tuned in all the security features and figured out how to kind of mass produce them. Like because like there's a certain like muscle memory of just the right amount of like mist of Gorilla Glue spray to glue the bills together. So like, there was a lot of like, oh, I sprayed too much and now they feel too thick and hard.
Yeah.
Or like I didn't spray enough and they'd start to separate, or it'd be like a really humid day and the bills would start to separate or something. So like after a few months, I got down that like the right distance, the spray and just the right amount, and like the hardness of squeegeeing them together. And then I learned like if you iron the bills after you glue them together, it kind of cures the glue and makes them feel real crisp. And then I learned like if you spray a thick coat of matte lacquer first to make sure the counterfeit pens work, you let that dry, but then you spray another coat from a distance and let the matte lacquer kind of mist on, and it feels like a sandpaper. But then you just take it to the edge of the table and like knock off that gritty feel, and it just crisped up and gave it texture. So like all those little things took a few months to kind of perfect. But I mean, I'd say after like 5 months of messing around with it, getting the digital images, all that, after about 5 months, it was like, I was off to it, like making probably 2,000 to 5,000 a day.
Wow. And did you set this counterfeiting station up at your house, or did you like go to other places? Because I've always heard like it might be risky to like do a crime like where you live.
Yeah, I mean, at first I was doing it at the house we were renting. Because like I said, the lease was up in like 2 months. So like I had a couple months. And then so there was a situation to where I was selling money to this drug dealer friend of mine. And then his house got raided for like his drug thing. But they found a bunch of counterfeit bills on him, like in his house that I sold him. You know what I mean? And then like a week later, like the lease was almost up in my house. We had like 2 weeks left and we were like planning on moving out. But then like the trash truck picked up on like a Monday, I think it was. And they didn't, like, we forgot to bring the cans by the road, right? So like on Wednesday, I like walked outside and the trash truck was sitting in front of my house parked. So I was thinking like, oh, I forgot to bring the trash cans down. So I ran up to him like, do you mind taking my trash cans? And they were like, oh yeah, throw it in. So I was like, okay. And I bring him the trash cans. And, the driver said, he's like, oh, we're having some issues with the truck. That's why we're parked here, whatever. I was like, okay. They dump it in the back. And then like immediately they drive off, and then like a blacked out Suburban, like, or like a new Chevy Tahoe with like, I know like what a Fed vehicle looks like. You know what I mean? It was just a sketchy situation, but I suspected that, and like my friend just got busted like a week prior to this and got caught with my money. So then like it kind of spooked me. but like I knew not to throw any evidence away in the trash cans by the road. Like I always went to a public dumpster and threw everything away, like trimmings and evidence, or like I'd go to like a gas station and just throw it away in a public trash can or burn it or whatever. So I knew they didn't have any like evidence, but like I suspected that they were going through my trash cans because I also knew that's how they, if they suspect you're counterfeiting, that's how they get a warrant, is they look through your trash first to like gather evidence for a warrant. So when I saw that, it like kind of freaked me out. And my lease was up. So like we just decided to go start living out of hotels and like just traveling around making this money. And, you know, because you kind of have to travel around to different cities to spend it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you stopped living in like the city you were living in and you just basically were on the road like the whole time?
Well, I mean, we kind of had the central hub of Knoxville. Like we'd go to Atlanta for like a week or two, you know, hit up these bookstores, gather these Bibles, get the paper, print, you know, make money, spend it. And then, you know, after a couple of weeks, then we come back to Knoxville for like a week. And then we'd go up to Lexington, Kentucky, or whatever surrounding cities, you know. So it was kind of just like every week or every other week, it would be, you know, a road trip to a different city. I've been all over Tennessee, down to Georgia, up to Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit, you know, basically all the big cities within about 6 hours of Knoxville.
For sure. And once you got good at counterfeiting, how long did it take to like make $100 bill? And like, what was like roughly the cost associated with it for you? Like maybe to make $10,000, like how much would it cost you personally to make that?
Not much, really. I was probably spending, like, I'd buy ink about every day, but like the ink cartridges was like, I think about like $80 or something. So like I was probably spending $80 a day on ink for the printers. Every day I'd buy like a couple new cans of matte lacquer and a can of Gorilla Glue spray, because the Gorilla Glue spray, like once you start spraying it, you really only can use it for one session, because then like the little nozzle gets clogged up and it starts spraying weird. It like it shoots out in spurts.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's really important to have the mist, the light mist of the Gorilla Glue spray when you're trying to glue two sheets together. So like every day I'd buy like a can of Gorilla Glue spray, 2 cans of matte lacquer, $80 worth of ink, and then acquiring the Bible paper, which was pretty much free for the most part. So yeah, I mean, maybe $110 a day would make me 5 to 10,000.
Great. That's good return.
Yeah, you're printing money, you know what I mean?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And once you started making the bills, did you like spend it right away and put it in circulation, or did you kind of like stockpile like a few grand and then slowly spend it at other places? How did you go about that?
So like normally I'd, you know, wake up at 8 or 9 a.m. I'd print until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So like I'd spend like 4 or 5 hours probably printing. And in that time, I'd make anywhere from like maybe 2,000 to 5,000 a day or so. And then like from 1 or 2 p.m. on until like maybe 11 or 12 at night, it was just try to break those bills I just made. Because like there's something about the matte lacquer that like if the bills sit for too long, that they start to feel weird. You know what I mean? So like if you freshly make them, they feel like they're fresh out of the bank, brand new, crisp $100 bills. But if you let them sit for like a week, like they start to kind of like peel and like, you know what I mean? So it was kind of important to like print in the morning and then spend them at night, you know, kind of launder the money essentially into real money and then just do it over again every day. That was kind of what I did for like almost 2 years.
And how did you go about spending it? Like what types of places did you go to?
Like I looked at it as like a job. Like people always thought like, oh, did you go buy cars and, you know, all this stuff. Like I looked at it as like, you know, you go to these maybe 10 to 20 different corporations that are really large corporations. They have their methods of detecting counterfeit bills, and I was able to beat them. So like there were certain stores, like for instance, like Lowe's hardware stores, they've got electronic bill validators. They put it in a machine, it detects the magnetic ink, it detects, you know, like infrared and all this other stuff. So I went to a Lowe's one time and I found out that way. They put it in a bill validator and it beeped red.
Ooh.
And they did it again and again. And then she called the manager over. The manager came over and looked at the bill and held it up, looked at the strip and the watermark, and they accepted it. She was like, oh, it must just be an old bill. The machine's maybe messed up or something. It's fine. So I was like, whew, you know what I mean? Like, fuck, I'm not going back to Lowe's, you know what I mean? Because now I learned they've got bill validators. So like through doing all this, there were some close calls, but like I've never really been turned down because like when someone comes to inspect the bill, they looked pretty much perfect. Like even if the machine declines it, you know what I mean, then a manager comes over and looks at it and scrutinizes it. But like they looked really good, so they pretty much always accepted them. But I learned through that not to go to that corporation because that's how they detect them. But like some Walmarts use counterfeit detection pens, but mainly they just like hold it up and look for the strip and the watermark and kind of just feel it or whatever. Like Dollar Generals use just counterfeit pens. They just mark them. So like that's an easy Dollar Generals, Family Dollars. Those were easy because all they did was mark them and that was it. Walgreens marked it with the pen. CVS marked it with the pen, but they had the pens with the black light attached to the cap. So they would shine the black light and look for the strip to glow red. But my bills beat that as well. So like basically like there was probably 20 corporations that I chose to go to. And it was like, you know, the big box retailers that everybody's heard of, you know, basically grocery stores, dollar stores, you know, like Walmart type stores. I tried not to go to like mom and pop stores just to fuck over like regular people trying to make a living. And then like, you know, basically I looked at it as like, just go in, buy some bullshit for $10 or $20 to get the change. That was it. Like, and then I kind of learned like, so then I like kind of was at a register and saw like the prepaid Visa cards at the register. And I saw that and I was like, it clicked like, well, fuck, I can buy $100 prepaid Visa card. And with like the $3 fee attached to it, it's like $103. And I can give them $200 bills and get $100 prepaid Visa card and $97 change. So it kind of like doubled my money. So I was like, shit, I'm just going to start buying prepaid Visa cards. I'll go to the card section and get like happy birthday niece or whatever, and then go get $100 prepaid Visa card and go buy them together. And like, you know, like I was buying a gift for my niece or something. And then like I kind of learned like, well, shit, I can go to stores and buy money orders. So then like I'd go get a $500 money order, give them $500, and then I just can go cash the money order and get $500. So like I kind of learned as I went how to make more and more money. You know what I mean?
And do you think your counterfeit bills were ever so good that the store didn't notice and then they like gave that as change to the customer? I guess if they tried depositing it into a bank account, then like they'd notice that it's fake. But like if they like gave it back as change to other clients, like it would be kind of funny that people wouldn't even know that it was counterfeit.
Oh yeah, I'm certain that's happened.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of drug dealers that I would like buy drugs from and like I'd continuously get them, you know what I mean? And like they were able to just go spend the money or re-up or whatever. Like they didn't even know the bills were fake. And like quite a few of them, even when they did find out eventually that they were fake, like they really weren't even mad because they were able to spend them and it just circulated. You know what I mean? So like there were certain people that I probably ripped off for like $10,000 or $15,000. Like they probably should have fucking killed me. But like really they weren't, they were just kind of like, damn, like you got me. These bills look good as fuck. I want to just start buying them from you. So like I was really lucky in that sense, you know what I mean? There was definitely people that probably should have capped my ass, but
They're like, it's so good. I want to buy these from you.
Yeah.
I guess, do you have any stories, like maybe especially in the beginning of like close calls, like trying to buy something at a store, trying to get like $80 worth of change and they're like, this bill doesn't look right. Do you have any like close calls in that sense?
I mean, there was like I said at Lowe's, you know, looking back at it, it wasn't really much of a close call. They'll accepted it, but like I was super nervous at the time. You know what I mean? Because like when she put it in that machine, I was like, I already know all the security features. So as soon as I saw that little bill validator, I was like, oh shit, like I'm fucked. Like that's just not going to work in this machine. So, but then like she called over the manager. The manager came and looked at it, and I just tried to play my cool, you know what I mean, and been like, you know, what's the problem? Is everything okay? And then, but then, you know, she held it up and looked at the strip and watermark and looked at it. And then she was like, oh, it must just be an old bill. Well, you know, it's fine. And she accepted it. So I was like super nervous. It wasn't really much of a close call, but like I was thinking like, I'm about to just bolt out the door. You know what I mean? Like, but, and then there was like cases where, Like I went to one store and before I started using that embossing glue pen, like the cashier would scratch the shirt and be like, huh, that's weird. And I'd just play dumb and be like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? And she's like, oh, I don't feel the texture, blah, blah, blah. And I just play dumb. I just be like, I don't know, it's real, isn't it? Like I just cash my check, blah, blah, blah. You know, you just kind of like, there's a lot of nerve wracking situations, but like I've never really had to like run out of a store or anything like sketchy like that. Because like even like the couple times that like the cashier might say like, oh, we've been getting a lot of fake bills lately, I don't want to accept this, I think it might be fake. Like I would literally just be like play shocked and be like, well, I just cashed my check at the Kroger, like I'm gonna, if you think this is fake, I'm gonna go bring it back to who gave it to me and talk to them about it. And then they just be like, yeah, you should, and they give it back to me. So it's like, you know, they have no evidence. Like the times they do kind of call you out, they just give it back to you and say, we can't accept this, go away. So then it's like, well, okay, you know, so it's really not sketchy because then you just leave with the bill. So they have no evidence of any law being broken because you're leaving with the fake bill. So it's just like, all right, and you go on your way, you know?
And I think a big part of it is like how you act. Cause I remember like a couple years ago when I was like not 21 yet, I just turned 21 when I was like 19 or 20, I'd like want to go to a bar with my friends. So everyone has fake, a lot of people have fake IDs. So I remember I'd be like going up to a bouncer, give him the ID, and the ID looked pretty decent, but it's sometimes about how you act too. Cause like, I think like it's not just about it looking suspicious. It's also just like how you're acting. Usually with most people, you'd be able to tell, but I guess after a while, you probably were doing it so much that you got pretty good at like not acting nervous, right?
Yeah, of course. And there was certain like kind of social engineering techniques that I would use. Like, so for instance, like when I went into a store to break a bill, like I would always choose cashiers of the opposite sex. And I'd also like choose either young cashiers or like old cashiers. Like I never chose like middle-aged men because like thinking about it, like they're maybe more comfortable with confrontation or whatever it may be. But also like I would ask first if they could break $100 bill because I wouldn't want a situation. I've been in the situation to where I gave them 100 and then they open their drawer and say, oh, I don't have the change, I have to go to customer service to break this. And then now they're dealing with managers and they're going in the safe and blah blah blah. I don't know what they're doing, if they have bill validators in the back, you know, I don't know. So like first thing I'd ask them like, oh shit, I only have $100 bill, can you break this? And if they say no, then like maybe I'll just pay with $10 real cash and leave. You know what I mean? But if they look in their drawer and say, oh yeah, I've got enough change to break it, then that's good. Then I give them the 100, and then as soon as I hand them the 100, I instantly give them the exact coinage. So it kind of distracts them. So then like if I'm buying something, say if I buy a prepaid Visa card for $100 and or $103.64. I'd give them two fake $100 bills and then instantly give them 64 cents in coins. So then they're distracted and they start counting the coins. And then after that, they typically just mark it with a pen or whatever. So like there were certain kind of ways that I did things. And I'm pretty confident with the bills. So like you said, it's like, you know, if they do call you out, it's just like, I don't care because I've been through this. I know what they're going to do. You know, I mean, they're not going to say, fuck you, this is definitely fake and we're calling the cops, because it's like, how can you prove it's fake? Look at, is there a strip? Is there a watermark? Does it have color shifting ink? Like, look at the bill. It has all that. So they're not going to really give me a hard time no matter what. And I knew that. So like, yeah, basically. And if I send like females in there, I'd tell them to go to male cashiers, young or old, and kind of flirt with them, make eye contact, be nice, presentable. You know, I'd cover up my tattoos, I'd tuck my gold chain, I'd buy diapers, or, you know, just try to play a part kind of.
For sure. And I mean, did you ever go back to like the same store a couple times or more than a couple times? Because I'd be nervous. Like you probably could get away with it once, but once you go back like 5 times, they might notice by then. Did you ever have that issue?
Yeah, that was probably a mistake I made. Because like I said, I'd go to certain cities for like a week or whatever, and then I'd come back to Knoxville. And then I'd go to another city, then I'd come back to Knoxville. So like I was living out of Knoxville, Tennessee. So like really I've been to like every single corporate store in Knoxville multiple times. And like eventually it got to a point to where I couldn't even spend any more bills in Knoxville because like just everybody knew. And there were like bolos out with like pictures of me and my wife, like be on the lookout for these people. Like, so it started like towards the end, it started getting kind of sketchy, especially in Knoxville. I was dealing with a bunch of like very large drug traffickers and like people from Detroit and Chicago and Atlanta and Cleveland that were moving kilos of heroin and like, it was just it got kind of chaotic towards the last few months.
And can you talk about that a little bit? Because you mentioned, I've heard you say in other podcasts that another way you laundered the money was by buying in bulk from drug dealers with maybe like a couple grand at once using fake bills. And you'd kind of like rip them off that way. Was that another big way you laundered the money?
Well, yeah. I mean, also like I was on drugs at the time. So like basically like I just got drugs for free because I could use this money. Like, so Knoxville is like a city where like pretty much most of the big drug dealers in Knoxville are not from Knoxville. They're from like mainly Detroit or Michigan. There's a lot from Cleveland, a lot from Atlanta, Chicago. So like they go to these like smaller cities because like drugs are 4 times more expensive in places like Knoxville than in Detroit. So like you can buy a brick of heroin for like almost $20,000 in Detroit, and then it's really strong, so you can cut it to 2 bricks, and then you can go down to Knoxville and sell it for $100 a gram, which is $100,000 a kilo. So you can literally turn $20,000 into $200,000 selling heroin in Knoxville. You know what I mean? So a lot of people do that. But with that being said, you know what I mean? These drug dealers from like Detroit come down to Knoxville, but they don't know any customers. So they're just like going to gas stations and being like, yo, what's up? You know what I mean? Like trying to meet people to sell their shit to. So it's like, it's really easy when you have counterfeit money to like rip off these strangers. Like these people just come up to you and offer you drugs. It's like, sure. Like, yeah, let me get your number. I'll call you in an hour. I'll get a gram from you. If it's good, I'll buy an ounce. And then boom, you just got them for 2 grand. So yeah, that was definitely a big part of it,
And did those drug dealers ever notice?
Yeah. Like some of them, like no one ever really caught. I've never been called out on the spot. Like every deal I did went smoothly. There might be cases where like, a couple days later or something, or a week later, they call me pissed off and I just answer the phone and kind of feel them out. They say, what the fuck? And then I just, don't talk to. They're strangers I met at the gas station. Like the Secret Service couldn't find me for 2 years. Like these drug dealers from Detroit aren't going to find me. Like I'm pretty good at staying under the radar. You know what I mean? So it's just like, whatever. And then like you kind of build these relationships with these drug dealers, and then eventually they find out that the bills are fake, and like some of them are mad, some of them aren't, some of them just see an opportunity to make more money because they're like, holy shit, these bills look fucking so good, they got me, so I can get other people. So then they just see money signs, and then you just start doing business with them.
And did that kind of create like a clientele you would sell bills to?
Absolutely. Yeah. There was probably, I'd say like 10 to 12 of the drug dealers that I ripped off that eventually became my customers, that I was selling anywhere from like 5 to 10,000 once a month to. So like, there was probably like almost 100 grand, anywhere from like 80 to 100 grand a month that I was selling to like people, then they'd go up to Cleveland to re-up. They'd have like 20,000 in their real cash that they made from selling dope. And then they'd want to just like mix in an extra 5 or 10 grand to my bills just to make an extra 5 or 10 grand,
And like, what was like the rate you would charge for counterfeit bills? Is there like a going rate of what you pay for like really good fakes?
Yeah, it's usually about 25% of the face value. And it all depends. Like if I liked you, or if I just liked you or whatever, I'd cut you deals. Sometimes whatever. If I didn't, I'd charge more. It's just it depends. But mainly, it's usually about 25% is kind of the going.
And I'm curious, in the peak of like this whole enterprise between like laundering the money at stores, selling it to drug dealers, how much money were you making a month? Because it seems like you were probably making a lot.
I mean, it's hard to say, like, really, because I know every day I'd never made less than $2,000. That was like my bare minimum. I'd make at least $100 bills every day, no matter what. So like, with that being said, anywhere from 60,000 a month to maybe 100,000 a month.
Damn. So you're making a lot. And were you able to like stockpile any of this profit that you were making before you ended up getting caught?
Hey, I'm on parole still. Nah.
Sorry, I can't ask that.
No, it's all good. No, I really didn't. I mean, not like what you think, but they seized a lot of stuff. I owe a lot in restitution. They end up kind of fucking you in the end either way. So
For sure. So like even if you stockpiled money, you still owe restitution. So you have to pay that all back pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I probably shouldn't have asked that. I'm not too familiar with like how that stuff works.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
And did you spend the money on like a nice place to live, like a car? Like, did you spend anything crazy or did you kind of try to keep it low key?
I mean, I tried to keep it low key for the most part. I mean, we rented a couple houses. We had a couple cars, me and my wife at the time. We lived very comfortably. We had jewelry, designer stuff. But I mean, for the most part, it was like, if you think about it, really, it's not as lavish as most people think. Because like, if you're making 2,000 a day, say, like it's good money. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I was living very comfortably, but like really out of that 2,000 a day that I was spending myself, like anywhere from 2 to 3,000 a day, like I said, you'll go buy something for like $20, right? So you're really only making 80% of that. And then you're buying just bullshit, whatever, shit at Dollar General. Like that's worthless, basically. Mm-hmm. So like, out of that 2,000, you're really only making 1,600 cash. You know what I mean? And then we were living out of hotels. We're eating out every day. I have kids that I was, and then there's cars and, just living out of hotels, eating out everywhere. It's like, I had a heroin habit at the time. So, I mean, like, of course, like I had nice jewelry, designer stuff. We were living super comfortably. We did whatever we wanted, but it's not like I was buying fucking Lamborghinis and stuff. You know what I mean? It was just like, but I just didn't get caught for a long time. So the numbers, like, I mean, after a couple years, it's like, yeah, I printed millions of dollars probably, but I mean, I was only making a couple thousand a day, maybe 5,000 a day or whatever. I mean, it was living comfortably. Don't get me wrong, but yeah.
That makes sense. And did people ever wonder like how you had money? Because did you keep a normal job to kind of like stay low key during that time, or
no, not at that time? I mean, it was a full-time job. Like I said, I woke up at 8, 9 a.m. I printed for 4 hours. I went shopping. Everybody thought I was a drug dealer basically when they saw me because I had big gold chains. You know what I mean? And living out of hotels, like just hanging out all the time, walking around with shopping bags every day, like. So I'm pretty sure most people just thought I was a drug dealer.
Okay.
But nobody really asked questions,
And how did you eventually get caught? Because you mentioned you had a 2-year run of making some pretty solid money.
Yeah. So like one of the guys, like, so this drug dealer from Cleveland, I was ripping him off. I got him for probably about $10,000 over the course of a month. And then he ended up telling me this, like eventually, I guess it was raining and like some of the bills I gave him was in his pocket and they got wet and the color shifting makeup like smeared off. So he said like he noticed that and thought it was weird. So he went and put one of my bills in a cup of water. And he said like after 5 minutes, the 2 pages just separated. You know what I mean? So he knew they were fake. He found out they were fake. So like at the time I was renting this house and I was ripping him off through this girl that was living with me. So like she knew all these drug dealers and I'd basically just be like, I've got this money, go rip these people off that and we'll split it or whatever. So like he didn't know they were coming from me or anything. But one day I come home to my house. I was living in Alcoa, Tennessee, which is like a little suburb of Knoxville. And I pull in my driveway and I see this black dude in the driveway yelling at my roommate, like pissed off. And he didn't know who I was. He didn't know the bills were coming from me. Like he thought they were coming from her, whatever. So like I just walked out. Like at the time I had a pistol. I was like, thinking like, oh God, this is going to be a problem, whatever. I grabbed my pistol, I put it in my pants, but I just walked by him and go into the house. He didn't say anything to me, but I overheard him. He was yelling at her like, I'm not even mad. I don't care. I just want to know where you were getting them from because I know you're not making these. So like I heard that and I just kept walking. I went into the house. And then the next day I asked her, I was like, just give me that dude's number. I'm going to call him and talk to him. So like I called him and basically just said like, I'm the guy you were asking about yesterday. I'm not paying you back. Like, dude, you're a heroin dealer. Like, you have no room to like, I mean, you're selling fentanyl throughout the city. Like, you got ripped off, like, so be it. You still were able to spend the bills. You're not really out money. If you want to do business together, we can do business together. But, otherwise, like, whatever. I'm the guy you were wanting to meet. So here's what it is. I think I gave him $1,000 in fake bills just to, like, ease the blow a little bit. But then after that, he just started buying like 5 or 10 grand every few weeks from me. And he'd go up to Cleveland, and he's kind of from this family that all are big drug dealers up in Cleveland. So like he'd go up there, meet up with his brother or whatever, get like a brick, come down to Knoxville, cut it to 2, and now he had, 2,000 grams to sell for the month. And so he'd go up to Cleveland every month or so. But so basically, like, eventually he went up to Cleveland with 20,000 in real cash and 5,000 in my bills, and he got pulled over, interrogated. So like the police knew he was a drug dealer. He's like this 25-year-old black kid driving in a stolen car with $25,000 in cash and a Louis Vuitton bag in his passenger seat. You know what I mean? It's just like stupid and obvious. So like the police seized that money thinking it's drug money. They didn't even know the bills were fake. They deposit it in their bank account, like their seized drug money bank account. And then the bank comes back and says 5,000 of these are fake. So like basically then the Secret Service get involved. And I've got all like the interrogation tapes and stuff. I like posted them on TikTok and all that. You can listen to them. So like they basically went to him and said, like, we know you're a drug dealer, but we don't care about that. We're the Secret Service. We want to know about this counterfeit money. So he basically, it didn't take him long to tell on me. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And like with that, the Secret Service said, like, we don't care about the drug thing you're doing. Like, we're the Secret Service. That's not our jurisdiction. We only care about the money. But if you're going to cooperate with us, we need to know you're being honest about everything. So like he opened up and admitted to being a drug dealer, making $700,000 a year, I think, selling heroin or whatever, that he was wiring the money to his mom up in Cleveland. They were buying properties, renovating them, renting them, all this stuff. So, and basically like he made a deal with the Cleveland Secret Service to come down to Knoxville and set me up. And like, basically that's what they did. They came down here. He called me and asked me to get him, I think it was like 600 or 700 grams of heroin, which like I wasn't selling that much. You know what I mean? Like I had my own thing with the money. Like I wasn't selling like kilos of heroin, you know what I mean? But he was trying to set me up for things that I didn't even do. Like, trying to get me to just kind of get it for him as a favor so he could, whatever. But nonetheless, when he asked me about the heroin thing, I just like hung up the phone. I was like, dude, you're crazy. Like, why are you talking about this over the phone? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even sell drugs. I was like, you're obviously cooperating. Like, I already knew what the deal was. So I just hung up, but they GPS pinged my phone and, found out my location and raided the room.
Oh, so they got your location, even though you didn't actually meet up with them. And then you had the counterfeiting stuff at that location you were at. And that's how you ended up getting caught.
Yeah. At the time I was in a hotel room in West Knoxville and I was printing 60. These other Detroit drug dealers put in like an order for $6,400. So I was in this hotel room, printing that at the time. And like, I thought I was being robbed because like I heard a knock on the door and I looked through the peephole and like there was a thumb over it. It was just black. So I like didn't say anything. They knocked again. They were like, yo, Jay, open up, blah, blah, blah. I need to see you. And I was like, no, I knew no one knew. Like, I never told people which hotel room I was staying at. Like, I was super paranoid, super secretive. Like, I bought a new burner phone every week or so. You know what I mean? I was constantly, like, looking under my car for, like, GPS tracking devices and shit. Like, I knew they were, like, looking for me. You know what I mean? So, like, I'd always make U-turns every time I'd pass my hotel, make a U-turn, pass it again, make another U-turn, and then go into it, just to make sure I wasn't being followed or whatever. Like, I was super paranoid about secrecy. So, the fact that somebody was knocking on my door and it wasn't a maid, like, it was sketchy. But nonetheless, like, yeah, I mean, I was in the process of printing. I looked through the peephole, it was blacked out. And eventually they just, start kicking in the door.
And at that point, were you like trying to like hide the money in some place, or were you just like, I'm screwed? Like I'm absolutely screwed.
Yeah, I tried to flush it down the toilet, but like since the informant that set me up was asking me about this 700 grams, like in the interrogation tapes, he told the like DEA and Secret Service that like I was dealing with lots of like he was like, oh, he's not just dealing with me, he's dealing with like I was dealing with like 10 or 15 like big multi-kilo dealers at the time. So like he was like, this dude, I think he admitted in the interrogation tapes that I wasn't a drug dealer, but he said like he knows he's got a lot of connections and knows a lot of people, so like I can probably get him to get me a kilo or whatever. Mm-hmm. So like, but either way, they thought I had like a bunch of drugs on me, which like I didn't. I think I had like an 8 ball of like personal use shit. But like, so I went to flush this money down the toilet, and I flushed like a few grand, flushed it, and then I threw a few more thousand in the toilet and went to flush it. But like they shut the water off, I guess. So like I couldn't flush it. Like the toilet was just out of water. So like I was just like, there was a bunch of like counterfeit money just in the toilet. And like I had printers like running at the time. And like I just knew I was fucked. I just sat on the bed, lit a cigarette, and just waited for him to kick the door in, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not much you can do.
That makes sense. And can you tell a little bit about what you can talk about in terms of when you were arrested? Like, did you end up having to go to jail, or like what was the reaction to like your bills? Because I heard that the Secret Service said your bills were like, I don't know, they said it was like the best they've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, they said it was the best they've seen in 25 years. So, I mean, you know, I don't know what the Secret Service sees. I'm sure there are very good counterfeits out there. I mean, I know mine looks like legitimate. You know what I mean? I didn't have trouble passing as many as I did. But at first, so like when I was first arrested, like the Secret Service was there at the time. My arresting officers was Greg Watson from the Knoxville branch of Secret Service. And there was like the Cleveland, Ohio Secret Service, the Knoxville Secret Service, the Knoxville Drug Task Force, the Organized Crime Unit, KPD, Knox County Sheriffs. So they were all like there at the time of my arrest. But the feds didn't pick up my case immediately because they didn't even know my name until a day before when dude was interrogated. So they knew there was this guy in Knoxville counterfeiting this money, but they didn't know who I was or anything. There was like a bolo out with a picture of me, but I don't think they knew I was the one manufacturing them. They just thought I was some guy breaking a bill. So either way, like I knew the feds were going to pick it up, but it took them about 3 months to get warrants to go through my computers because they need warrants to actually access the computers. And once they did, they found all the different templates of serial numbers, like the files with all these different serial numbers that could link me to like hundreds of thousands of dollars spent throughout Knoxville alone. So it was like, you know, I knew the feds were going to pick it up. But like, so for the first 3 months, I sat in Knox County Jail on state charges. It was just like, you know, the state of Tennessee versus Jeff Turner, blah, 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 for criminal simulation over 60,000. You know, eventually I went to court about 3 months later and the state dropped all charges. So like I knew like, and then my lawyer's like, yeah, but they're going to walk you across the street and serve you an indictment in the federal district. So like, and that's exactly what happened. I walked across the street to the federal building. They served me an indictment. Secret Service picked it up. I ended up getting out on pretrial release. So like there was certain, they thought I was a flight risk because like I'm from Florida, but I was living in Knoxville, but I was traveling and I got set up by a guy in Cleveland and there was like hundreds of thousands of dollars missing and like all this stuff. So like they thought I was just going to flee. But like at this point, you know what I mean? Like you caught me, you know, it's the federal government. Like you can't, you know what I mean? You can hide from them for a little bit, but like I figured like, fuck it, you got me, you know what I mean? But so they let me out on pretrial and then COVID hit. So like the courts were shut down. So I was out on pretrial for like 2 years because yeah, COVID hit and everything was just postponed and shut down for 6 months, you know, so like eventually while I was out on pretrial, the Secret Service came to me and like offered me this deal, basically like, if you plead guilty, they wouldn't charge my wife with anything. They'd keep my restitution amount under $100,000, which avoids enhancements and stuff. Because like for how much money you print or whatever, it's like certain enhancements. There's an enhancement at like 100,000, an enhancement at 1 million, blah, blah, blah. So they basically offered me this deal and said like, if you make a training video for future Secret Service agents, like explaining how your whole process, how you learned it, make a couple bills on camera for Secret Service agents and like training future agents. They'd consider that substantial assistance in like catching future criminals or whatever, like training agents. And, that reduced my sentence from like 36 months to like a range of 10 to 16 months. So like, yeah, I accepted that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the only co-defendant on my case was the one that set me up. So like and he already spilled the beans on himself and everything. So like there was really like I didn't really even have to snitch on anyone because like he already admitted to all of his shit and he set me up. So it was basically just like,
snitching on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, the Secret Service knew I was on drugs, and he even said, "You got a beautiful family. I know you're wrapped up in drugs." Like blah blah blah, whatever. Like they were pretty cool once I pleaded guilty and it showed them how I was doing everything. And then he was like he said he was super impressed, and he's like, "I never get to see professional counterfeiters like this, and like you're super talented, blah blah blah." Like whatever. But yeah,
I mean, I kind of agree with them though. It's like, I think you don't realize that that's probably like a super difficult thing to do because it's so much attention to detail, so much like different like craft stuff. Were you like good at art and that kind of stuff like growing up? Were you like always pretty good at that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've taken more art classes than I can remember, probably most likely. Yeah, like
So is that
had art hung up in the Dali Museum in St. Pete and the Smithsonian in DC and stuff like that.
So that makes sense. And is that kind of what you're doing now? Something with art or?
Well, I'm the production manager at a printing and graphics company.
Oh, nice.
So like basically just commercial printing.
Hell yeah. Well, I guess to kind of finish the interview off, I wanted to talk about like just counterfeiting in general, literally just like a couple quick questions, and then we'll pretty much be wrapping up. So number one, like, so if I handed you a fake bill, what would tell you right away that it's fake? Like, what's the mistake that most counterfeiters make?
So I'd say, well, it depends what denomination of bill, what year, because there's different things to look for different denominations and different years and stuff. But for the most part, most people, I would say most people don't know. Like a lot of people know that there's little red and blue fibers, right? Have you ever heard that in the pulp of the paper? But most people don't know that the actual color of a bill is microprinting. So like if you look at a modern $20 bill, it looks green. It goes from green to beige to green, like just the color of the paper, it looks like. But if you were to look under it under like a microscope or magnifying glass, you'll actually see that green color is symmetrical patterns of green lines. And it's basically like the whole color of the paper is all microprinted. It's not just a solid color printed on it. You know what I mean? Same thing with like the new Blue Note $100 bills. So like really the hardest thing to replicate is the microprinting, I would say. Like I was able to print microprinting to the naked eye. Like if you looked at a bill with your naked eye, like and you looked real close, you could see the microprinting on my bills. But if you put like a magnifying glass up to it, it would look blurry. You know what I mean? Because microprinting's super hard to replicate. But like what cashiers have magnifying glasses or like loops, like you know what I mean, at the register. Like
and that might be a smart thing for stores to do. Like thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I even like thought about designing a certain type of counterfeit detection pen with like multiple different things. Because the only counterfeit detection pens I've seen either are just the iodine-based ink pen, and some of them have the black light on the cap. But there's also like, and you could put a magnifying glass on one. You could put a neodymium magnet and literally pick $100 bill up off the ground with a neodymium magnet. You know what I mean? Because the magnetic ink. So like, there's a lot of different ways you can test bill's authenticity by simple methods.
And I've also heard that the most commonly counterfeited bill, I might be wrong about this, is the $20 bill. Why didn't you ever try to counterfeit the 20? Because I'm thinking like trying to break 100 and getting $80 worth of change is a little more suspicious than spending $20 for a $3 pack of Skittles getting $17. I get it's not as fast, but I'm sure it'd probably be like less detectable. Did you ever consider doing 20s?
Well, I did do 20s for a few months, but it just wasn't enough money. I mean, you're like, I was going to fast food restaurants and buying a large drink for $2 and only making 18. I mean, you're walking into a business on camera breaking a counterfeit bill, committing a federal offense for $18.
Yeah.
I mean, like even hundreds, like hundreds were worth it because like if you get this system down, you can make $200 at every store you go to and hit up 50 stores a day, and boom, 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 you make 10 grand a day, whatever. That's worth it. Well, I mean, I still got caught, but it was worth it at the time. But like $20 bills, like I've always said, for every $20 bill you counterfeit, you're literally losing $80. Like, because if you're going to counterfeit a bill, why wouldn't you just counterfeit the $100 note? Because, you know what I mean? The same security features are on a 20 as there are on 100. So it's like if you're looking for, you know, if you just counterfeit basic $20 bills without security features, like you're just crossing your fingers, gambling, hoping the cashier's an idiot and doesn't even look at the bill. Like that's, and if you're going to take your time to do color shifting ink and strips and watermarks on a 20, then you might as well just do 100 because you're breaking all the security features anyway. So it's like you're either gambling, hoping that the cashier's an idiot and doesn't notice, or you're spending the time to make a quality bill, in which case do go for gold, you know.
And this is kind of an interesting question, but while I was doing research on counterfeiting, I saw it's estimated that 1 in every 10,000 bills in circulation right now could be counterfeit. That's just an estimation. It's really hard to know, but I kind of like searched it, and they're estimating that in the States, the rate of counterfeiting is much higher. Like in Australia, they estimate it's 1 in every 100,000. Do you think there's a reason why more people counterfeit the US bill, or do you think it's because it's easier to make, or just because it's more popular? I was curious about that.
Well, I believe Australian bills are that new polymer.
They're like plasticky, just like the euros.
Yeah, exactly. So like those are harder to counterfeit, and like the new Blue Note hundreds are pretty hard to counterfeit. Like I was able to replicate them pretty well, but like it just wasn't worth doing because it literally took me like 45 minutes to an hour to make one Blue Note, and it's like it was more of just like a hobby or a challenge for me. Like I wanted to get it down. I figured if I could get it down, then I could eventually speed it up and make them faster. But like they were just hard to do because like the Bible paper you cut out, you have to cut out that 3D security ribbon out of the Bible paper, and then you apply 2 sheets with lenticular lens array film, and it's just like, dude, it's so time consuming. It's like it really just wasn't worth doing because I was literally making $100 bill every hour, and it was like, and then I got to go break this, and so I'm only making $80 an hour. It's like, fuck, I might as well get a job at that point. You know what I mean? But the 96 series, I could make a perfect $100 bill in 5 minutes. So it's like, you know what I mean? Those you could mass produce, and those are still in circulation. I didn't have any trouble breaking them. So it was like the 96 series, it was just, I looked at it as a job, as a business, like mass produce these, make as much money as possible. You know what I mean? Like the Blue Notes, I worked on counterfeiting them, and I was able to, but it just wasn't worth doing. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like I think I probably made like maybe $2,000 in Blue Notes. And it just like, even that was like in my spare time at 2 a.m. I'm just like, as a hobby, like I'm a weird fucking dude. I read about this shit and like study it and like do it as like a challenge, you know. It's stupid, but it wasn't really profitable.
It's so funny hearing you talk about this because like a lot of times I'll interview, I don't know how much of my videos you've seen, but I'll interview like other business owners, like people who started an Airbnb business, Turo, stuff like that. And it's funny, like the similarities between like what you did, which I guess it's illegal, right? But it's funny how you still had a passion for it. You really took the time to learn it and like grinded to like figure it out. And it's like the same thing for people who have like authentic businesses. So it's like, it's almost the same thing, except, I mean, obviously it might be a little easier because it's less competitive, I think, but it's just like, there's definite similarities in terms of like an illegal operation and a legal operation. It's like, you just got to translate it to a legal thing. And it's like same attitude, and you're killing
I know a lot of drug dealers that treat it like a business. You know, I mean, it is. When you start making serious money at something, illegal or not, you take it seriously. You know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, if you're motivated and you know, you start making real money, it's like, all right, I gotta take this seriously, and you know, there's a real opportunity here. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I've also seen like some people who like interview successful entrepreneurs. They'll mention like, you know, back in the day, they might've done something and then they like translate that same work ethic to like what they do now. And it's different, but it's really not that different. It still takes a lot of time to get good at something like that, but.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess for the audience, like where can they find you on social media?
Well, I'm on Instagram, shit, I don't, what is it? J period Turner 727, I think. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Jeffrey Patrick Turner. I think on Facebook it's just Jeff Turner from Knoxville, Tennessee.
And and I'll
Yeah,
also have it linked in the description below for people to check out too. So, dude, I
awesome.
appreciate you coming on. I mean,
I appreciate
that's
you. Thanks for
awesome.
having me, man.
Of course, of course.